Melanie was 32 years old, and she worked as a nurse at one of the biggest hospitals in the city. Inside the hospital, she was confident and calm. Patients trusted her gentle hands. Doctors relied on her sharp focus and steady judgment. She smiled often at work, and people believed she was happy. But every evening, when Melanie returned to her small apartment, the smile slowly faded. Her life followed the same quiet pattern every day. Hospital corridors filled with voices and urgency. Then a long walk home. Then silence. No one waiting for her. No questions about her day. No laughter. Just a small apartment, soft lights, and the sound of her own breathing. She told herself she was fine. She loved her job. That should be enough. One late evening, after a long shift, Melanie was walking home as usual. Her feet were tired, her mind heavy. Suddenly, a car stopped too late and lightly hit her from behind. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. The impact was not strong, but fear rushed through her body. The car door opened immediately. A man stepped out, wearing a dark suit. He looked alarmed. Without hesitation, he rushed toward her and gently helped her stand up. His voice was full of concern. He asked again and again if she was hurt, if she felt dizzy, if she needed a doctor. Melanie shook her head. She was shaken, but not injured. The man insisted on driving her home. At first, she refused. She did not trust strangers easily. But his worry felt sincere, not forced. Finally, she agreed. During the short drive, they spoke very little. Still, something about his calm presence made Melanie feel safe. When they arrived at her apartment, she thanked him politely and stepped out of the car. He smiled warmly, wished her a good night, and drove away. Inside her apartment, Melanie sat on the edge of her bed, confused by her own thoughts. She replayed the moment again and again. The way he looked at her, the care in his voice, the warmth in his smile. She shook her head and whispered to herself that it meant nothing. He was just a kind stranger. Nothing more. A few days later, while Melanie was working at the hospital, she entered a patient's room to change a bandage. When she looked up, her breath stopped. It was him. The same man. The same eyes. This time, wearing a hospital gown instead of a suit. Fate, quietly and unexpectedly, had crossed their paths again. Melanie wrapped the bandage around the man's head carefully, her fingers steady from years of practice. He sat on the hospital bed, watching her with an easy smile, the kind that made people feel relaxed without trying. He remembered her. That surprised her more than she wanted to admit. In the busy rhythm of the hospital, most faces blurred together, but he looked at her as if that night on the street had mattered. They talked while she worked, small, simple things at first. He joked about being clumsy, about how stairs were more dangerous than cars, and Melanie laughed, a sound she had not heard from herself in a long time. After that day, he began to wait for her near the hospital entrance when her shift ended. At first, Melanie tried to refuse. She told him she could walk home alone, that it was unnecessary. He only smiled and said he was already there, that it cost him nothing to drive her. His voice was calm, patient, never demanding. So she agreed. The drives home became part of her routine. They talked about her work, about the long nights and tired feet, about his job and the strange turns life sometimes took. He listened when she spoke. He remembered details. That alone made her feel seen. Slowly, Melanie began to open a door she had kept closed for years. The apartment that once felt silent now felt lighter when she knew someone would knock on her door later. She cooked for two. She laughed more. The loneliness that followed her home every evening loosened its grip. With him, she did not feel rushed or pressured. He felt safe. And safety, after a long time alone, felt like love. Days turned into weeks. He stayed longer. Sometimes he slept over. Melanie told herself to be careful, but her heart had already decided. She believed in the steadiness of his presence, in the way he showed up every day without excuses. For the first time in a long while, She allowed herself to imagine a future that was not empty. Then one morning, everything cracked. On her way to the market, Melanie stopped near a bakery and froze. Across the street, she saw him laughing with a woman. A child stood between them, holding his hand. The woman's arm rested naturally against his, the way couples did without thinking. They looked like a family, comfortable, complete, real. Melanie's chest tightened. The world seemed to tilt. In that single moment, every memory rewrote itself. The rides home. The smiles. The quiet promises she thought she felt. Her hope collapsed into one sharp question she could not escape. Had everything she trusted been a lie? Melanie did not sleep that night. The image stayed in her mind again and again. The man she loved standing on the sidewalk, laughing softly, a woman holding his arm, a child walking beside them. They did not look like strangers. They looked like a family. A real one. The kind she had secretly dreamed of but never dared to hope for. By the time morning came, her chest felt heavy, as if something inside her had cracked. That evening, just like every other day, he came to pick her up after work. His car stopped in front of the hospital. He stepped out, smiling, calling her name the same way he always did. But this time, Melanie did not smile back. She walked straight to him, her hands shaking, her voice tight with pain. "How long have you been lying to me?" she asked. He looked confused. "Melanie, what are you talking about?" "I saw you," she said. "At the bakery. With her. With the child. Don't pretend you don't know." His face changed. The warmth disappeared. He was silent for a moment, then sighed. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said quietly. Her heart dropped. "So it's true," Melanie whispered. "You have a wife. You have a family." He looked away. "I enjoy being with you, Melanie. You make me happy. My wife doesn't know. There's no need to make this complicated." Those words hit her harder than any slap. Melanie felt something inside her harden. The sadness turned into anger, sharp and burning. "I am not your secret," she said firmly. "I am not someone you hide." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "I will not destroy another woman's life just to feel loved," she continued. "And I will not destroy myself." Without waiting for his answer, she turned and walked away. Each step felt heavy, but she did not stop. That night, she cried alone in her apartment, not just because she lost him, but because she realized how easily she had trusted again. From that day on, he never came back. The messages stopped. The car never waited outside the hospital again. It was as if he had disappeared completely. Melanie returned to her old routine: work, home, silence. She built walls around her heart, thicker than before. Love felt dangerous now. Trust felt foolish. A few days later, a new doctor joined the hospital. His name was Andrew. He was kind, calm, and gentle with patients. The nurses whispered about him, laughed when he passed by. Melanie did not care. She kept her eyes down. She kept her distance. Whatever her heart once wanted, she no longer allowed it to hope. Because from that moment on, Melanie believed one thing deeply. Loving someone meant giving them the power to hurt you, and she would never do that again. After everything Melanie had been through, she never thought she would let herself love again. Yet Andrew was patient in a way that felt different. He never rushed her, never pushed. He joked when she was quiet, listened when she finally spoke, and respected the walls she had built around her heart. Over time, those walls softened. Melanie began to feel something she had not felt in a long time: safety. Andrew became part of her routine without forcing his way in. He walked with her to work some mornings, waited outside the hospital with coffee in the evenings, and never made her feel small for being cautious. When she pulled back, he stayed. When she doubted, he reassured. Slowly, Melanie allowed herself to believe that maybe not all love ended in betrayal. One evening, as they sat quietly in her small apartment, Andrew looked at her with unusual seriousness. He told her he loved her. Not dramatically, not loudly, just honestly. Melanie felt fear rise in her chest, but also hope. She told him the truth about her past, about how deeply she had been hurt. Andrew listened without interrupting. When she finished, he made her a promise. He said he would never leave her. He said he would face problems with her, not disappear when things became difficult. Against her fear, Melanie chose to believe him. Weeks later, her life changed again. Melanie discovered she was pregnant. Her hands shook as she told Andrew, her voice filled with uncertainty. But Andrew's reaction was immediate joy. He hugged her tightly, spoke about the future, and promised that everything would be all right. For the first time, Melanie allowed herself to imagine a life that felt whole. Then, without warning, Andrew disappeared. He did not come to the hospital. He did not answer calls. Days passed, then weeks. Melanie's messages remained unread. At first, she told herself there must be a reason. Then fear returned, sharper than before. Old wounds reopened. She stopped sleeping. Every silence felt like confirmation of her worst fears. One afternoon, while walking through the market, Melanie saw him. Andrew was standing only a few steps away, laughing softly beside a woman. They looked close. Familiar. The world seemed to tilt. Her chest tightened, her breath disappeared. She did not wait to hear an explanation. She turned and ran, the sound of her own heartbeat louder than everything else around her. At home, Melanie collapsed onto the floor. She cried until her body ached. This time, the pain felt deeper than before. Not just betrayal, but shame for believing again. She thought of Andrew's promise, of the future she had imagined, of the child growing inside her. Every thought felt unbearable. In that moment, Melanie believed one thing with absolute certainty: love had fooled her twice. And this time, it had taken everything she had left to give. Andrew stood outside Melanie's apartment door for a long moment before knocking again. Inside, Melanie sat on the floor, her back against the door, eyes swollen from crying. She had replayed the same scene in her mind all night: the market, the laughter, the woman at Andrew's side. To her, it had looked exactly like betrayal. When the knock came again, firm but gentle, she opened the door with shaking hands. Andrew was standing there, thinner than before, his face pale, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept in days. Before he could speak, Melanie's anger finally broke free. She slapped him, then again, tears streaming down her face. All the fear she had carried since the first man spilled out at once. Andrew didn't stop her. He didn't raise his voice. When she finally collapsed into sobs, he spoke quietly through the door she had slammed shut again. He told her everything. After Melanie sent the message about the baby, Andrew said he had been overwhelmed with happiness. He wanted to share the news with the only family he had left, his older sister, who lived in another city. On the way there, his car was hit in a serious accident. He was rushed to the hospital unconscious. His phone was destroyed. For weeks, he couldn't remember phone numbers, couldn't move properly, couldn't leave the bed. The woman Melanie saw at the market wasn't another lover. She was Andrew's sister, the one who had stayed by his side every day while he recovered. When he was finally discharged, the first thing he did was come back to Melanie. When the door slowly opened again, Andrew was crying too. He didn't defend himself. He didn't accuse her of not trusting him. He simply said, "I understand why you were afraid. But I never stopped loving you." Melanie broke down completely. She realized how deeply her past pain had shaped her fears. She had mistaken silence for betrayal, absence for abandonment. For the first time, she chose to listen instead of run. Andrew's sister stepped forward and embraced her, not with judgment, but with warmth. In that moment, Melanie felt something she hadn't felt in a long time: safety. Their family didn't begin perfectly. It began honestly. Melanie learned that not every unanswered call hides a lie. Not every delay means someone has chosen to leave. Real love, she understood, is built on trust, patience, and the courage to hear the truth even when fear is loud. And this time, She chose differently. If this story helped you reflect on trust, fear, and true love, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more emotional English stories.